So it was very interesting this week. I had a friend call me and ask me, they said, hey, I just saw this stat on Bloomberg and I heard you almost say something. You started to say something on PBD podcast last week about refinery. So as we know, the Biden administration has not been allowing energy companies to drill as much as they want. New drilling permits are important because exploration finds new oil reserves or expands the drilling in an existing known reserve area so they can pull that oil out of the ground and turn it into jet fuel, car fuel, heating oil, gasoline, which is car fuel, all those things they're going to turn it into. Well, what has happened is during COVID and during the Biden administration, the environmentalists and the Greens have been like, nope, no more drilling, don't want to drill, we're going to cancel pipelines, because we want all of that to force people toward renewables, toward solar, toward wind energy, toward all these other things, geothermal. So that's what the push is, okay? And they're like, hey, if we make gas expensive or we don't let them drill, that kind of forces people to invest in other ways. Okay, so here you go. Well, but what it also says is maybe U.S. energy companies, Exxon, Chevron, people like that, maybe they start buying oil from other people because there's two parts to being in the oil business. Drilling it, getting it out of the ground, and selling it once you've turned it into gasoline, jet fuel, and these things. And is that chart up? Pop the chart up if you would now. Give me a thumbs up when the chart's up. Okay, take a look at this. So if you're not going to let them drill, they're going to work on the sell side, which also goes with the refinery side. So take a look at this. And we'd like to thank our friends here at RBC who put this together. But the global refinery capacity, look how it dropped in 2021. You go all the way over to the right-hand side and you see refinery capacity fell in 2021, as it says, for the first time in more than 30 years. But in 23 to 24, it's going to post the strongest 2-year growth since 1977. Wait a minute, what happened in 1977? I'll tell you what you could do. You could go watch the movie Argo and also study the Jimmy Carter administration where we had the Arab oil embargo. That's not a racist comment. That's what it was called. The Arab nations of OPEC had said, we're not going to be sending oil to the United States. It created gas shortages and things like that. So about that time, they build refineries. In other words, they don't care where they're going to buy it. They want to make sure the refinery's on U.S. soil so that they can convert it on U.S. soil. So why are they adding all this refinery capacity? Because they are looking at it from two sides. If I can't drill, I'm going to refine, and I'll buy it from Venezuela, I'll buy it from other places, but that's what I'm going to do, and then they're going to refine it here. So as long as they can get the oil here, whether it comes from North Dakota, they got shale oil here, we have West Texas Intermediate, we have Gulf of Mexico, we have some in Alaska, we had a lot of oil in the United States, and we could be independent if we wanted to drill. But not going to let us drill, then we're going to build refinery capacity so that we will not be dependent on other people. We can refine it here and we can go out and buy it. But isn't that interesting? The strongest 2-year growth since 1977 is in global net oil refinery capacity. So everybody is looking to do that, especially here in the United States. And believe it or not, I think, and I'll find the exact one, Exxon Mobil fired up expansion of Beaumont, Texas. And with 250,000 barrels of extra capacity that they can run in Beaumont, Texas, that is the largest capacity addition in the United States in over 10 years. So you can see what's going on. If the UN and all these folks think that around the world what they're doing is pushing green energy, there's part of the energy infrastructures out there that says, hey, a lot of this green stuff isn't here yet. We need lithium, we need a lot of, to make batteries, like for cars that are gonna make an electric car, you still gotta make the electricity, so you've got energy, still fossil fuels being used that way, and then you still need gas and aviation fuel. But I thought it was very interesting. So Here's a lesson for us. I wonder how many entrepreneurs look at life this way. In other words, this isn't a big company thing, and it's not just an oil thing. You know, do you read the wider market and do you remain alert? And give me a couple examples of that. When SVB crashed, Silicon Valley Bank, when they crashed, we saw all sorts of articles. Why'd they crash? What happened? Did the VCs put out a bunch of tweets and all these people ran on the bank? Well, yeah, maybe all of that happened in some part and some of it was overblown, but all those stories were going on. Below the surface, you saw a story that it was rumored that in those 48 hours going into that weekend, because remember, I believe this bank died on a Thursday, Friday, and I think we covered that like in BizDoc podcast here. You had JP Morgan bankers telling their friends, and their friends were tweeting, and then the media called JP Morgan, and they didn't deny it, but they didn't admit it. But they worked 48 hours, and people were working all night, reaching out to small companies funded by venture capital that had just lost their bank and said, hey, you need to make payroll. I can get your payroll account set up, and I can get it connected to Paychex, ADP, whoever you're using, and I can get you going. Bring your stuff to JP Morgan, we'll help you. Well, some of my money is trapped there. I've only got this much money. That's okay, we'll get the account set up, you move it over here, and let's get your people paid. So what was that? That is an example of what's happening. Why is all this refinery capacity being built? Why is Exxon Mobil firing up and doing all these things down in Beaumont, Texas? Because where there's shortages or there's pinches on one side, the capitalist and the entrepreneur says, how can I fix it? How can I be part of the solution? How can I help somebody and do it for my company? And that's exactly what JP Morgan did. So, you know, you look at that and you say to yourself, where is your company? You may have a small company, and I'll give you an example. You know, a few years ago, there were these horrible, horrible tornadoes hit Oklahoma, and there were churches and volunteers that were out there trying to clear the streets. But once the streets were cleared and they got electricity restored and the injured people could get to places and homes that were destroyed, you could get insurance adjusters in there. That's all the immediate stuff. Then there was a long bit of cleaning up. And I read about a couple companies that were in Indiana that got their guys together and a couple RVs and said, look, we're going to go down and not only serve the people of Oklahoma, we're going to help our business. So they lived out of RVs and they were clearing driveways and people's property and cutting up all these trees, and they weren't gouging them. They were like, here's an opportunity that we can make more this quarter, but let's get RVs, because the hotels were full. So they lived in RVs, and they went down there and they opportunistically went in there. That's what JP Morgan did. JP Morgan worked all night, giving people banking services in their hour of need, not gouging them, and that's what those folks did. And that's very much what Exxon is doing. They're not doing this benevolently, they're doing it for themselves, but they look at it and say, wow, a combination of factors out there is creating an opportunity in my industry. If I can't drill, build the refinery. How do you think about it like that? So last week, we interviewed Marilee Kick. She is this female CEO and founder of Southern Champion, and they make buzz balls, which you see them in spirit stores or Costco and places. Little round little balls like this. It's a margarita. You just pour it over ice. It's ready to drink, ready to pour. Well, during the peak of COVID, they refined alcohol. Well, alcohol, gelatin, some few other things, and they could make hand sanitizer, you know, because you feel it's like that jelly that kind of evaporates. It's got alcohol in it and disinfectant, and boom, now you've made hand sanitizer. So she was using her operation to make hand sanitizer, and they gave a lot of it away. Now, why were they doing that? Because in the hour of need, they could do something. And then people remembered her and Southern Champion and said, I remember you. So it could be goodwill for your company, but also can be opportunistic, like JP Morgan and the landscape companies that went down to Oklahoma and were living out of RVs with their crew, paying their crews overtime, making extra money for their company, not gouging the public, but taking advantage of the situation for it. This only works when you're paying attention and you're prepared and you're what I call head up and looking around versus trapped and head down. And I think that that is a great lesson for all of us. So when you look around your industry, sometimes people cry about things. Some people moan about things. Do you have a supplier that's crying about something? Is there an opportunity for you maybe to make something that you normally buy? There may not be. But the point is, have the head on and have the eyes up and think about it that way, because that's what's going on, you know, with energy and a lot of other places. But I thought it was very interesting. It's been 10 years since the U.S. has seen that kind of refinery built. So as long as we can get the oil here, they can get it refined. And it's Exxon's way of putting them in position not to be part of a gas shortage, but to ensure there isn't a gas shortage. There you have it.